So good afternoon. It's kind of exciting to win a teaching award. This is my 11th year teaching in a university classroom, and I am happy to be able to feel that I've been steadily improving. I think maybe that's a key principle of my teaching philosophy, actually. I think that it's very difficult to spend the time necessary to try and improve your pedagogy steadily over time. But in fact, it can be very difficult to remain motivated if you're not changing what you're doing. So one of the key principles of my pedagogy is that I try and change something every semester. And because I'm a literature professor, one of the easiest ways to do that is just to switch out one text for another text. And when I do that, it requires me to spend time reading the background, finding out about who this person is, understanding the place that they live, where they came from, and all of this sort of broadens my own understanding. So this semester in my literature and context class, we're reading Charles Dickens for the first time, and I've been preparing materials about Charles Dickens and Victorian England and the culture of London in the 19th century. This isn't actually my area of professional expertise. I work primarily in American literature. But it's actually been a lot of fun to read about this and spend some time working in this. And now I have books about Rudyard Kipling here for the next thing that we'll be developing for literature and context. I think this is quite important because when students feel that you're reading from a PowerPoint slide that you read the same the previous year, the year before that, they can feel that. And I think that it becomes difficult for everybody. The classroom becomes a place of learning of a kind, but maybe not the best kind of learning in which everybody seems to be required to put forth a kind of effort that shouldn't really necessarily feel that way. So I try to make sure that my students feel like I'm learning something, and I try to point at places in my teaching where I've learned something new, where I don't know something. And I try to tell my students when I reach those places that the best thing for them to do is to write me a paper to help me learn more about this subject. So that principle, change something every semester, is a big one for me. And it's had lots of consequences, not just in terms of the texts I teach, but the way I frame my assignments, the way I organize my tutorial sessions. I don't ever do anything the same twice. I guess this is innovation. And I think that innovation is one of the most important words when we talk about teaching and learning. But my preference for innovation in teaching and learning is to kind of keep the scale small. Innovation doesn't always need to mean big, splashy changes to the way students and teachers interact. Of course, I've spent a lot of time with digital learning, e-pedagogy, flipped classrooms, online forums, Facebook as learning software. All of these things are worth trying. But I think sometimes it's really small changes that have the biggest impact on how students interact with you and how they interact with the classroom material. So I'll give you an example. For the last couple of years, I've been kind of working on group presentations. Almost every class, at least in my area, has group presentations. And group presentations are important because they seem to fit with a lot of the priorities of contemporary pedagogy. You want students talking, you want students engaging in learning that they have originated themselves and are developing themselves. You don't always want to be downloading information into students' minds. You also want to change the mode of instruction. You want to get students up in front of the classroom. You don't always want to be standing there barking like a dog at them. This fits, a lot of the things we're trying to do in the classroom these days. At the same time, group presentations can be very frustrating. Other students have a hard time paying attention to them. Other students feel like, why am I listening to these people when I'm paying you to take this class? And in fact, student presentations can be really bad. They can be wrong. They can be confusing. They can be unrelated to the things that you're trying to learn in the course. So all these are real problems. And I've been trying to attack this set of difficulties not by inventing some dramatic technological solution to this problem or eliminating it, but just seeing if I can tweak the group presentation process in ways that make it more productive. So I think that innovation is important, but excellence, of course, is always important, another buzzword. And I think that, for me anyway, that kind of ethos of constant improvement in the classroom is really what keeps me going back with a full heart, rather than the feeling that I'm kind of repeating myself. So that's really kind of at the core of my teaching philosophy: to stay fresh, to stay new, and to make those kind of incremental changes that make a big difference in the classroom. Before I came to teach at the university, I had never had a literature course with a big lecture hall, and that's a challenge. Teaching literature is largely a skill-building activity. If a student can memorize the plot of a novel, that's not a very high-level mental skill. I want to be able to see them interact with the meaning of that text in a kind of detailed, analytical way that is a process of learning for them. And that's the most important thing, then, for them to be able to go, it's a symbol. And the symbol means whatever. So it's not a very high-level literary skill. When you're teaching in a lecture hall, you don't really have the opportunity necessarily to give that kind of, detailed feedback. So there are a couple of ways of addressing this. First of all, I always try to communicate with students following a lecture via email. I send a post-email lecture. The post-email lecture says, "That was fun. I hope you had a good time. Here are the things that I think should be emphasized in this lecture. Here are the things that I really hope you remember in this lecture. And also here are two things that I really wanted to say but I didn't have time to say in this lecture." And so I've made a practice of writing that email, and it's for them. It also helps me continually improve these lectures, keeping what I said earlier, so that I go back the next year and think, I never got around to saying this, maybe I can change it. But it also just provides a quick way for students to respond to me, because now they have an email from me about that lecture, and so it's easy for them to click reply and write me back if they'd like to. The other thing that I've started doing is using Facebook for course management software. This has good results as well, even in the lecture classroom. So the nice thing about Facebook, of course, is that if you have a class Facebook page, you can post a question and get answers from students via their cell phones more or less immediately. And they appear on the screen behind me and give me an opportunity to see what my students are thinking. Even in the lecture hall, this is not very disruptive. It doesn't take very much time, but it, again, makes the interaction a little bit richer than it would otherwise be. So I know that there are other ways of getting that kind of feedback in the lecture hall, but Facebook has been working for me pretty well so far. What I think about lecturing is that one of the reasons that I'm in academia at all is because I was fortunate enough to encounter some great lecturers when I was a student. I think that teachers and academics shouldn't underestimate the extent to which lecturing is a kind of performance space, and the extent to which students can really be galvanized and energized by a kind of performative energy in the lecture hall. I think that it's important for me anyway to lecture at the limit of my students' ability, zone of proximal development, but also for me to make sure that I'm pushing myself in terms of my sense of my students' ability to understand and stay with me and move forward, and also in terms of my ability to convey information clearly, lucidly, and in the most compelling way possible. So you have to honor the almost sacred quality of everybody being together in the same place at the same time. And the way to do that is to make sure that you are engaged enough in the material and feel that it's important enough to talk about the material with your students that they can feel that kind of energy in your classroom. So I think that lecturing, although I wasn't practiced at this before I came to this university, has become kind of important to me, because when I walk out in front of 140 or 150 people to talk, I feel like I owe them, what they paid for. And I think that drives me a little bit, and it certainly has it keeps me motivated when I think probably these slides or this lecture is good enough. I gave it last year and nobody complained. I try not to let that feeling take over. I try to make sure that I'm spending the time necessary to change what I'm doing for the better, consistently, year by year. There's always room for some improvement, and I think that the lecture as a hall is a place that can happen.